Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to discuss an alarming report that's been circulating in the media lately. It's a study from Aston University that claims Britain's trade with the European Union has continued to collapse since Brexit. The study was published in September 24, so this month, and its findings have raised serious concerns about the future of UK-EU trade relations. In this video, we're going to break down the key points from the study, look at what's driving the collapse in trade, and explore the broader economic and political implications for Britain. So let's start by diving into the study itself. So what does the study actually say? Researchers at Aston University in Birmingham have analyzed the data on Britain's trade with the European Union from 2021 to 2023, the years immediately following Britain's exit from the EU customs union and the single market. And the findings are quite stark. The value of British goods exports to the EU fell by 27%, while the value of imports from the EU dropped by 32%. And these are significant declines, especially when you consider the scale of trade between the UK and the EU before Brexit. The collapse in trade is not just a one-off, it's part of a broader ongoing trend, and according to the study, things are getting worse over time. For example, 2023 showed a sharper decline in trade than the previous 2 years, which suggests that the negative effects of the post-Brexit trade agreement are deepening. And this raises major concerns for British businesses, particularly smaller exporters, who have been disproportionately affected by the new trade barriers. And now let's talk about which sectors have been hit the hardest by this collapse in trade. According to the Aston University study, the sectors most affected include, first of all, agriculture, secondly, clothing, and thirdly, wood and paper production. And these industries have seen some of the largest declines in both exports and imports, which is troubling because they represent essential parts of the British economy, especially in rural areas and for smaller businesses. Perhaps one of the most shocking statistics from the study concerns edible fruits and nuts. Exports of these goods to the EU have fallen by nearly 3/4, a staggering 73.5%. And this isn't just a minor dip. It's a dramatic collapse that's likely to have ripple effects throughout the supply chain, from farmers and producers to distributors and retailers. And the study also found that the diversity of British export goods has declined. This means that the range of products Britain is selling to the EU is shrinking. With fewer types of goods being exported, Britain's economy could become less competitive in the global market, and it limits opportunities for growth in key industries. So, why has trade between Britain and the EU collapsed so dramatically? Let's go over some of the key factors. And the first and the most obvious reason is Brexit itself. Britain's departure from the EU in January 2020 marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in trade relations. Since leaving the customs union and single market in 2021, UK businesses no longer have the same access to the European market that they once did. Despite a last-minute free trade agreement, there are still significant barriers to trade. And tariffs may not be a major issue in most cases, but bureaucratic hurdles, customs checks, and regulatory misalignment are. British goods now face delays at the border, added paperwork, and higher costs for compliance with EU standards. And according to the study, smaller British exporters have been particularly hard hit by these new trade barriers. Many smaller businesses simply don't have the resources to navigate the complex paperwork or handle the delays caused by customs checks. As a result, a growing number of them have stopped trading with the EU altogether. And this is a critical issue because smaller businesses make up a significant portion of the UK economy. And if they are unable to trade with the EU, the economic fallout could be severe, particularly in regions that are more reliant on trade with Europe. And another key factor is the distribution to supply chains. Before Brexit, many UK industries relied on smooth cross-border supply chains that spanned Europe. Now, with the introduction of new customs checks and border delays, those supply chains have been, fractured. And this is particularly problematic for industries like automotive manufacturing and agriculture, where just-in-time deliveries are crucial to keeping production running efficiently. Post-Brexit, Britain is no longer required to follow EU regulations, but that creates new challenges. UK exporters now have to comply with both UK and EU regulations if they want to trade with Europe. And this dual regulation is particularly burdensome for industries like pharmaceuticals, food production and manufacturing. And it adds significant cost and complexity, which further discourages trade. And interestingly, the Aston University study did identify a few sectors that have defied the overall trend and seen growth. The report highlights that exports of tobacco, rail and aircraft goods have increased. Additionally, the services sector has performed better than expected since Brexit, but there are still transitional periods. It's important to note that this study focuses primarily on the trade of goods and not services, so they might have forgotten that part. So while the collapse in good trade is clear, there may be some resilience in areas like financial services for the time being, which continue to play a key role in the UK economy, but that will change in 2025. However, the study cautions that these bright spots are not enough to offset the broader decline in goods trade, and one of the most urgent conclusions of the Aston University study is that political intervention is necessary. The researchers argue that without significant changes to the current trade policies, the situation could deteriorate even further. And they outline several areas where action is needed. The free trade agreement between the UK and the EU may have prevented a complete collapse in trade, but it clearly hasn't gone far enough from their point of view. And the bureaucratic hurdles and trade barriers introduced by the agreement need to be addressed. And that could involve, in their point of view, renegotiating certain aspects of the deal or finding ways to streamline customs processes, but we all know renegotiating won't happen. As supply chains continue to suffer, the study suggests that businesses need help in redesigning their supply networks. And this could involve creating more domestic supply chains within the UK or finding alternative trading partners outside the EU. But this will require government support and investment, particularly for industries that have traditionally relied on European suppliers. And finally, the study calls for more direct assistance to British companies that are struggling with the new trade barriers. This could take the form of financial support, training programs to help businesses navigate post-Brexit regulations, or creating partnerships with EU businesses to facilitate smoother trade. And now let's discuss how the political landscape fits into all of this. Since the new Labour government came into power, led by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, there has been talk about improving relations with the EU. However, Starmer has made it clear that Britain will not be rejoining the EU customs union or the single market. While this approach signals a willingness to ease tensions with the EU, it doesn't change the fact that Britain is still outside of the systems that made trade with Europe frictionless. So while Labour may try to build closer ties and smooth out some of the bureaucratic hurdles, it's unlikely that we'll see a return to the type of trade relationship the UK enjoyed before Brexit. And this leaves the government with a delicate balancing act, improving trade relations without fully reversing the political decisions of Brexit. Whether or not that's possible remains to be seen, I doubt that, but the Aston University study makes it clear that some form of intervention is urgently needed. In summary, the Aston University study published this month provides a sobering look at the state of Britain's trade with the European Union. The collapse in trade since Brexit, particularly in key sectors like agriculture and manufacturing, highlights the deep challenges the UK faces in maintaining its economic competitiveness. And the study's call for political action should not be ignored. The collapse in trade isn't just a temporary dip, it's part of a longer-term trend that could have lasting consequences for British businesses and workers. And while there are some bright spots in specific sectors for the time being, the overall picture is one of decline, and unless significant changes are made, the situation is unlikely to improve on its own. And as always, I'll be following the story closely and I'll keep you updated as new developments unfold. And if you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more videos on the big issues facing Britain today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. It's right here in the end screen.